To order on this Wednesday, March 9th. Roll call, please.
18th Legislative Day, Wednesday.
Go ahead.
18th Legislative Day, Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. Roll call. Anderson. Here. Baldwin. Beitman. Here. Boner. Here. Bouchard. Case.
Excuse.
Cooper. Driscoll. Here. Ellis. French. Here. Murphy. Guru. Here. Hicks. Here. Hutchings. James. Here. Kinski. Cole. Present. Cost. Here. Landon. Here. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Here. Perkins. Here. Rothfuss. Salazar. Here. Schuler. Here. Scott. Here. Steinmetz. Here. Wasserberger. Here. Baldwin. Excused. Rothfuss. Here. Bouchard. Excused. Furphy. Excused. Hutchings. Kinski.
Sergeant at Arms, I hear his voice right back there. Okay, excused.
Excused. McEwen.
Excused.
Nethercott.
Excused.
And President Dockstetter.
Here.
23 present, 7 excused.
Prayer by Pastor Sales.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, again, thankful that we can be here today, Lord. Thankful for each one of these servants here that is here to serve this state. Lord, I would pray as they come to this final week and get to the Wednesday of the week, Lord, that you would give them the strength and endurance to finish up the things that they're trying to do. Lord, that the result of that is that we would bear the good fruit of good legislation. I would pray, Lord, that you would help them to be able to accomplish the things they need to, knowing there's probably a few staffers and things out with snow today, Lord. I pray that you would move things along swiftly, and we do pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Hicks, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the reading clerk please read the Journal Committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 8, 2022 has been read and recommends it to be approved. Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Any objections? Hearing none, it's adopted. Under Doctor today, Allison Barnett, PA. Nurse of the day, Jessica Boltholz, Registered Nurse, Cheyenne Regional Medical Center. Today in Wyoming history, in 1888, Natrona, Converse, and Sheridan counties were created by the territorial legislature. Again, that's Natrona, Converse, and Sheridan. They were created by an act of the territorial legislature which overrode a veto for the territorial governor. How about that? Governor didn't want those counties. Quote for the day: every day is a school day. It's been cited in print since at least 1921, when it was said by the Rotarian Walter S. Young, an assistant superintendent of schools, Worcester, Massachusetts. Session status: last day for second reading of bills in the second house. Now, we're going to honor the interns, but I think I'd like to have everybody on board when we do honor those interns. We'll just wait a little bit till we get everybody back. Let's go to signing of enrolled acts. Yeah, I could have waited, I could have done this last night when you were tired, but now you're fresh for this experience. We're at that order of business, signing enrolled acts. Senate File 18, Enrolled Act Number 22, read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 22, being original Senate File 18, an act relating to highways.
Yeah, about to sign. Enrolled Act Number 22, the same being Senate File 18. So signed. And Enrolled Act Number 21. Maybe I should have done it while you guys were sleepy last night. Okay. Read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 21, being original Senate File 9, an act relating to revenue bonds.
About to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 21, the same being Senate File 9. So signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 23, read it in, please. House Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 23, being original Senate File 49, an act relating to boards and commissions.
About to sign Enrolled Act Number 23, the same being Senate File 49. So signed. Enrolled Act Number 24.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 24, being original Senate File 48, an act relating to the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Funding Act.
About to sign Enrolled Act Number 24, the same being Senate File 48. So signed. Enrolled Act Number 25.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 25, being original Senate File 26, an act relating to the judiciary.
About to sign Enrolled Act Number 25, the same being Senate File 26. Signed. Enrolled Act Number 26.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 26, being original Senate File 19, an act relating to taxation and revenue.
About to sign Enrolled Act Number 26, the same being Senate File 19. So signed. Enrolled Act Number 27, read it in, please.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 27, being original Senate File 10, an act relating to agriculture.
About to sign Enrolled Act Number 27, the same being Senate File 10. So signed. Enrolled Act Number 28, please. Read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 28, being original Senate File 32, an act relating to reading assessment and intervention.
About to sign Enrolled Act Number 28, the same being Senate File 32. So signed. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, March 8, 2022. Message number 246. Mr. President, the House did concur on Senate amendments to the following bills. House Bill number 72, Hunting License Application Funds, ayes 47, noes 11, excused 2. Message number 247. House Bill number 137, State Land Exchanges Public Notice, ayes 36, noes 22, excused 2. Message number 245, March 8, 2022. Mr. President, Senate File 47, Carbon Storage and Sequestration Liability. Senate file passed on third reading in amended form. Ayes 43, noes 13, excused 4. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Message number 249. Mr. President, the House appointed House conferees to meet with the like committee number 1 from the Senate on amendments to Senate File 40. House conferees are Representative McGuire, Chairman, Representative Burt, and Representative Oakley. Message number 249. Mr. President, the following House or Senate files, the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bills. Senate File Number 76, Financial Exploitation of Vulnerable Adults. Ayes 19, noes 39, excused 2. The bill has been indefinitely postponed. Message number 250, Senate File Number 56, Lottery Amendments. Ayes 21, noes 35, excused 4. The bill has been indefinitely postponed. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. No concurrences, so let's move on to bills of second reading. No? Oh, we do have some. Okay, let's go ahead and take care of those. Senator Anderson, are you ready on Joint Conference Committee Report number 195? This is electric vehicle charging stations. We can give you a minute there.
You better give me a minute, because I don't
Okay.
have that.
All right, no problem.
I'd be proud to do it, but
Let's go to the next one. No. I think you're good now, Senator. Phone a friend.
I'm good
Okay.
now,
All right.
Mr. President.
Okay, then, reading clerk, please read it in.
Joint Conference Committee Report, Senate File 35, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations Regulation Exemption, referencing reference House Message Number 195. Signed, Representatives Burkhart, Ayer, and Yin. Senators Anderson, Rothfuss, and Wasserberger.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, as a senator from Cody was bent to say, we clobbered them. We really did it to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had them delete their amendment that they made to it, which was not an amendment that we passed here in the House or here in the Senate. We didn't pass it in committee, nor did we pass it afterwards, and they picked it up. And so they said they would delete their House amendment.
Okay, let's have you formally move it just for the record, and we'll be set.
Oh, I move reference House Message Number 135 on Senate File 35.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any discussion? There being none, motion is the Senate do adopt Joint Conference Committee numbered 195, referencing Senate File 35, and vote aye. The Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Senate File 35, Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? James? No. Kinski? Kolb? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Nethercott? Pappas? Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. Hutchings? No. Kinski? Aye. McEwen, excused. Nethercott, excused. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing. Hutchings? Hutchings, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 35, 26 aye, 2 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you've adopted Joint Conference Committee Report, message number 195 to Senate File 35. And it- Before we go to this next one, folks, you've had these sent out to you electronically, and if you feel a need to have paper copies, right up here on the table. Senator Scott, I'm told you already have yours? Okay, we'll give you just a moment.
I know. Well, go tell them. Don't tell me.
Didn't know I had that many friends in the paper world, so.
Yeah.
Ready, folks, everybody look what you have in your hand. We're gonna continue now. Senator Case, are you ready on message number 236?
I am, Mr. President.
Please read it in.
Message number 236, referencing Senate File 38, monthly ad valorem tax revisions.
Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move message number 236, the concurrence request to Senate File 38, monthly ad valorem tax revisions. Our friends down the hall just put in some, really it's more grammar and clarifying language, Mr. President. As you might recall, when this bill was first introduced, our friends in the industry, mineral industry, asked for the opportunity to pay their taxes in full early if they could, and we put an amendment in to do that. Our friends down the hall tweaked that amendment a little bit so that instead of our language said, nothing in this subsection shall prohibit a taxpayer from voluntarily remitting to the counties the remaining balance of deferred taxes without penalty. That was our language, that was our amendment. They've tweaked it a bit, and for the better, Mr. President, they say nothing in this subsection shall prohibit a taxpayer from voluntarily remitting to the counties any remaining portion of non-delinquent deferred taxes without penalty. And that sounds so much better, Mr. President. I think it works just fine. And so I hope that we will join our colleagues, and this will finish our transition in the state of Wyoming to monthly ad valorem taxes as soon as the man downstairs signs it. Thank you.
Okay, discussion, message 236, Senate File 38, discussion? There being none. Motion is the Senate do adopt Joint Conference Committee Report number 236, referencing Senate File 38, and vote aye. The Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Senate File 38, concurrence, vote, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Murphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? No. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Excused. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Scott, no. Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Concurrence on Senate File 38, 24 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted a concurrence request, message number 236, referencing Senate File 38. Senator Anderson, are you ready on message number 245?
Mr. President, I am.
Okay.
Ready.
Reading clerk, please read it in.
Message number 245, referencing Senate File number 47, carbon storage and sequestration liability.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I move message number 235 to Senate File 47, carbon storage and sequestration liability. The other body went in and destroyed quite a bit of our paragraphs, so we want to talk to them about what they did and why they did it. So I'd encourage you to vote no on that message. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any discussion? Motion is that the Senate do adopt Joint Conference Committee number 245, referencing Senate File 47, and vote no. Chief Clerk will please call the roll. Senator
Mr.
Scott?
President, could you explain again exactly what we're voting on, because I'm confused?
I'll allow that. Oh, can we do that? Yeah, Senator Anderson.
No, Mr.
We're gonna have the Senator Anderson explain again.
Chairman.
Go to Senator Rothfuss.
Just so that it doesn't close debate, I'll stand up and answer that. So this is 47? Okay. That's right. So, Mr. President, this is for concurrence on Senate File 47, which is the carbon captured underground sequestration liability legislation. We are asking to not concur. There was a change in how the liability was managed down the hall. That change basically said nobody's liable, which is awkward. So we wanted to have a conversation to figure out if there's a better way to go about it than saying nobody's liable, which doesn't seem very workable to us. So I would ask you to vote no.
Senator Anderson, or no, Senator Scott, are you good? Both of you good? All right, here we go. Motion is the Senate to adopt Joint Conference Committee Report number 245, referencing Senate File 47, and vote no. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Senate File 47, concurrence, roll call vote. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Whiteman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinski? No. Cole? Aye. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen excused. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 47, concurrence, 4 aye, 25 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you failed to adopt Joint Conference Committee Report Message Number 245 referencing Senate File 47. Folks, we're to take a little break here. Looks like we got everybody on the floor, so let's introduce our interns. They come in and I'll read a little something here. We could have our interns come in. There we go. Come on in. While you're coming in, I'll read this. Wyoming Legislature sponsors an internship program which allows students enrolled in an institution of higher education to obtain credit, along with a unique behind-the-scenes opportunity to assist legislators and gain insight into the legislative institution and its vital responsibility in creating public policy. In addition to the college students, this program includes high school students in their junior or senior year and aides, all of whom are sponsored by individual legislators. Our legislators benefit by having someone who can help them in the areas of constituent mail, bill tracking, summaries, draft talking points, writing news releases or newsletters, and similar such services. So with that, we welcome the interns to the Senate floor. And with that, we'll have a little further introduction. Go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker, and privilege of the floor, please.
Please do.
Thanks. So I am very pleased to have this group of interns with us this morning, after not having anyone participating in a program last year. It's just been really fun. So I would like to introduce the 4 of them that are here. Casey, we had a total of 11 this session. So Casey Pate is from Northwest College. She's a double major in political science and allied health with a specialty in surgical technology. And she will be attending UW next semester, working towards a bachelor's degree in political science and minoring in market communications. Her goal is to be a policy analyst or working as a grant writer, and she's looking forward to spending time doing photography in our great state this summer. Next to her is Kaylee Smith, and she drives in from Wellington. So she told me that she went about half the way behind a snow truck this morning, trying to get here, so we're really grateful she made it safely. And she's doing the internship program through LCCC, a member of the Army National Guard in Wyoming, and pursuing an associate's degree in communications and creative art. She also plans to attend UW in the future, looking towards a career in journalism, media, or communications. And next to her, we have Lexi Darty, recently graduated from the University of Wyoming with a degree in ag communications and assisting with political campaigns this year, while she's exploring some job opportunities in the political scene. Once she's able to find gainful employment, she intends to use the proceeds to support her barrel racing habit. And and I think she was Miss Teton, right? Teton County, yeah. So she was sponsored by Representative Somers, and she's been helping him with his nightly news releases. And last but not least, we have Jenna Broomfield, who's a junior at East High School. She became interested in the political process when she was about 12, 5 years ago, and Representative Brown was walking the neighborhood campaigning, and she started grilling him on his political views. So she's got a future here. So he has been her sponsoring legislator, and she was also on the champion cross-country team this year. So lots of fun things for that. A couple others who participated, Maya Marcis, who is in Laramie. She was going to be here today, but obviously the roads are closed, so she's not. But she has been working through the governor's office, which is the first time that has happened, so that she can see the legislative process. And she's working on a master's in social work. And then we had Ashley Riley, a high school student from Sheridan, sponsored by Representative Flitner. Grant Baxter, also from Sheridan, sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer. Grace Steinberg from Burns, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Sahaley Allen from Cody, sponsored by Representative Duncan, and Spencer Travis, who's doing an independent study with Representative Banks and Sherwoods. So you can see by this that we need a few more sponsors in the Senate part, but just a plug there. But as I said, thank you so much. Actually, I think in each house, there have been a number of people, or in each body, who have gone through an internship program in Wyoming. And we are so grateful for that opportunity that as a legislator, that you provide as a legislature as well. I just think many of tomorrow's political, business, and educational leaders come from this field. So just join me in welcoming them, and thank you for your support.
Could I tell us again our Senate sponsors? Could you mention those again for us?
Senator Nethercott was.
Senator Nethercott, thank you so much. All right, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for letting us be here.
All the best with your careers. I heard someone in political science there. I think she was picking out her seat down there, so. Okay. All right, note here, I got on Senate File 47, message 245, a concurrence committee or conference committee will be Anderson, Rothfuss, and Perkins. Anderson, Rothfuss, and Perkins, Senate File 47. Very good. Okay, let's continue with our concurrences. Senator Nethercott, are you ready with message number 234?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we do concur on message number 234.
Let me just have it read in real quick. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Message number 234, referencing Senate File 27, dissolution of county board's authority.
Okay, appreciate it, Senator. Go ahead and move it again. We're good to go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we do concur on message 234 to Senate File 27. Good Senators, the House feels very passionate about museum boards, and so they do not want museum boards ever to be dissolved. That's it. I feel like it's a reasonable compromise, and I encourage your aye vote.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. Motion is the Senate do adopt Joint Conference Committee Report number 234, referencing Senate File 27, and vote aye. The Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Concurrent vote, Senate File 27, roll call. Anderson? Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? No. Kinski? Aye. Cole? No. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen excused. Nethercott?
Aye.
Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Anderson? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. James, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 27, concurrence, 25 aye, 4 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee Report number 234, referencing Senate File 27. On with conference committee reports, signing of enrolled acts. Too late. We're going to do it. Okay. Enrolled Act number 42. Read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 42, being original House Bill 137, an act relating to state lands.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 42, same being House Bill number 137. So signed. With each signing, I get you a little closer to home. House Enrolled Act number 41, read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 41, being original House Bill 72, an act relating to game and fish.
About to sign Enrolled Act number 41, same being House Bill 72. So signed. House Enrolled Act number 40.
House Enrolled Act Number 40, being original House Bill 89, an act relating to mineral production.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 40, the same being House Bill 89. Signed. House Enrolled Act number 39, please read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 39, being original House Bill 136, an act relating to underground water.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 39, the same being House Bill 136. Signed. Enrolled Act number 38, read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 38, being original House Bill 55, an act relating to alcoholic beverages.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 38, the same being House Bill 55. So signed. House Enrolled Act number 37, read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 37, being original House Bill 56, an act relating to the Department of Audit examination of books of special districts and certain specified entities.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 37, the same being House Bill 56. So signed. Enrolled Act number 36, read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 36, being original House Bill 123, an act relating to environmental quality.
About to sign Enrolled Act number 36, the same being House Bill 123. So signed. Enrolled Act number 35, read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 35, being original House Bill 49, an act relating to elections.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 35, the same being House Bill 49. So signed. House Enrolled Act number 34, read it in.
House Enrolled Act Number 34, being original House Bill 117, an act relating to professions and occupations.
About to sign Enrolled Act number 34, the same being House Bill 117. So signed. And one from earlier, read it in, House Enrolled Act number 12.
House Enrolled Act Number 12, being original House Bill 7, an act relating to commercial vehicles.
About to sign House Enrolled Act number 12, the same being House Bill 7. Okay. Bills on second reading. Senator Pappas,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor?
please do.
Dear colleagues, I want to introduce some fine young folks that are visiting us today. Up in the gallery up above the good president, you'll find the shining faces of the 21-22 Leadership Cheyenne class, some up and coming leaders here in Cheyenne. So the Chamber of Commerce here in Cheyenne, the Greater Chamber of Commerce sponsors Leadership Cheyenne, and today the class is visiting us. Please give them a great welcome.
Leadership Cheyenne, welcome to the Senate. Let's go to bills on second reading. House Bill 44, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 44, Mobile Home and Vehicle Titles and Transfers.
House Bill 44 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senator Landon, were you standing for privilege a moment ago? Okay, thank you. House Bill 53, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 53, engrossed, Military Department discrimination or harassment grievances.
House Bill 53 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 64, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 64, engrossed, vehicle service contracts.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, yesterday afternoon, I jumped down off the chair and raced back here to present the bill to you that is being considered right now. I wanted to apologize to the body. I represented to you that this was a bill that came through our body last year. It did not, and I apologize for you. It was not considered on the other side. The bill has been around for a couple of years, but it was not considered by us last year, and I just wanted to clear that up, and I apologize for to the body for misrepresenting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Landon. Appreciate that. House Bill 64, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 73, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 73, omnibus water bill planning.
House Bill 73, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 91, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 91, county officers' salaries.
House Bill 91, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 92, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 92, abortion prohibition, Supreme Court decision.
There is an amendment. Read in the amendment.
House Bill 92, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 13.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 92. Mr. President, what this does is reinstates the exceptions for rape and incest. Some people feel very, very important about this, or feel that this is very important, Mr. President. That's what it does. That's the traditional exceptions we've had in the law, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must say I do appreciate the bringers of the amendment bringing this and letting me know they were going to do it beforehand. But I want to respectfully ask you to vote no on this amendment. Historically, sexual assaults take years in the courts to process. This isn't just a matter of saying I've had a sexual assault and tomorrow that rapist is going to jail. Normally, the rapist doesn't go to jail, or if he does, it's for a reduced sentence. And so he may not even get a rape conviction. And by that time, the young lady could have had 2 or 3 children. Incest, and this may sound amazing to you, this may be the only way for a young lady to be able to prove that she has been molested. Taking away that evidence by taking away a life may mar that young lady for life. Sentencing an innocent human to death just because of the way they were conceived. Scientifically, via DNA, it proves that this body in the woman is a distinct human being. So for that, Mr. Chairman, I ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? There being none, all those in, Senator Landon.
Mr. President, I come from a district where there are a couple of hospitals. I believe that the bigger hospital in my community served constituents from every one of your districts in the past year. And I took the time one day to go down and visit with our emergency room doctors and nurses. If you have not ever done that, I wish you would. It was a valuable experience for me. And what was just represented to you is that you never really know what might have happened to a young lady. Well, that just simply is not the truth. What our emergency room doctors and nurses see on a regular basis is exactly the opposite of that. They know exactly what happened to a young lady. And I just, I have a little bit of trouble with this whole issue. I'm going to vote for this amendment because I think it's important for the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, and without getting into the merits of it, I just like to point out that it's incredibly ambiguous. It doesn't say that there has to be any evidence, any charges filed, any medical evidence, as we heard the previous speaker discussing. It simply says as a result of incest or sexual assault. And frankly, I don't know what the effect of this amendment is. So we need some clarification, if anything. Not even get to the merits of the intent of the amendment. I think it blows it's such a significant loophole that it basically guts the bill. So for that reason, on and against.
Thank you. Senator Salazar.
Ask for a roll call, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss, and then over to Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment. And the idea that the concern would be that this is too vague, it calls into question a little bit about the vagueness of the bill, which anticipates the possibility of a Supreme Court decision which is as yet unwritten, and then enacts law speculatively based on an as yet unwritten Supreme Court decision. I don't know that you could exceed that in terms of vagueness. This provides statutory definition of incest as defined in Wyoming statute. You can pull up 64402, or sexual assault as defined by statute. And it says the pregnancy is a result of one of those two actions. It is clear and direct. It is intentionally not ambiguous. In fact, I think everybody here understands that I fully believe in choice. But in trying to respect at least the most egregious situations where an individual is traumatized deeply by the pregnancy that they experience, recognizing that individual's right to individual autonomy, to control over that woman's body, to me seems even more justified. And I hope you'll join me, Mr. President, in supporting this amendment.
Further discussion? Senator Scott.
Mr. President, and I'm hoping I'm understanding the amendment correctly, but as I understand what it does is it restores basically the language we've had all along to the statute that limits our ability to pay for an abortion. And that it also puts that language in the general provision of the bill here. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, excuse me, there was allegations that this was unreasonably vague. I would report to you that on the issue of the funding of abortions, it has not proved to be vague. That several times over the years when I was chairman of Committee 10, I inquired formally of the State Department of Health that would be the ones that would be funding, mostly through the Medicaid program, any of these abortions, as to whether or not we were in fact funding any. And the answer came back, Mr. President, sometimes it came back we'd funded none in the preceding year. Sometimes it came back we'd funded one or two. They were the language we'd had that we put in 1985, which is very similar or identical to what's being proposed here, was effective in terms of limiting the funding of abortions and to only allowing them in very rare circumstances. And I forget how many times I inquired over all those years that I was on Committee 10, but that was always the answer, that language was being effective and we weren't funding abortions except in very rare circumstances. So, Mr. President, on for the amendment.
Back to Senator Case. Okay, we'll go to the sponsor last. Go ahead.
Just quickly for my second time, I
For
wanted
the record, Senator Hutchins is speaking. Go ahead.
I wanted to just note, two of my colleagues from the same county gave two different stories. One gave the impression that in the emergency room, we're just overrun with cases of incest and sexual assaults. And then one gave the impression that we have one or two. So again, taking a life because of the circumstance of conception is wrong. We shouldn't, two wrongs actually don't make a right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Back to Senator Case. Oh, thought I hit it. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate the discussion here. I think with reference to my two colleagues from the same county who spoke on this issue, one was speaking with respect to abortions that are funded probably through our Medicaid program. And indeed, those numbers are extremely low. In fact, I can only think, I believe there was one case. My other good colleague was talking about abortions that may have, or perhaps the administration of contraceptives, morning after pills, coming through an emergency room, which would not necessarily involve Medicaid funded. So I think they're two consistent testimonies. Mr. President, I struggle with this issue, but I really believe in a woman's right to determine their destiny with respect to their body. I just do. That's where I come down on this. It might be called privacy, the Supreme Court decision, but women are not property. They don't belong to the state. You can't make them do this. I know you think you can, and I think that's where the bill wants to go. But especially in these very egregious circumstances, Mr. President. The government can't do this to women. They're not our property. We don't get to decide these kind of things. It's beyond the people on this floor. So I ask for this small consideration. I'll be voting against the bill. I hope my colleagues will join. But this is one small consideration in very egregious cases. And I appreciate the time today, Mr. President. You're gracious. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for the question. Roll call requested. This is on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 92. Senator Salazar.
Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 92, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinski? No. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen excused. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 15 aye, 14 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 92 is passed. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand the importance of this bill, and I think my concern was yesterday, I think we didn't talk about it at all. And maybe we don't like the practice of abortion. I understand that. But we owe it to the women of Wyoming to at least have the conversation and to talk about this bill. It moved really fast yesterday, so Mr. President, I did want some clarification and someone to walk me through the concept of the enactment. I think a lot of eyes are in Washington, D.C., seeing what would happen if a certain U.S. Supreme Court decision was overturned. And so as I read Section 2 of this bill, it's a little unusual how this would take effect. Section 2 says, after receiving a certificate from the Attorney General that 35-6-102B is effective as provided in the subsection, the Secretary of State shall report that fact to the Management Council of the Legislature, the Joint Judiciary Committee, the Wyoming State Board of Medicine, and they shall immediately publish the effective date on the website on the Secretary of State's office. And then which effective date shall be 5 days after the date that the Secretary of State received the certification. I remember a few years ago, we were looking at a revenue issue where we were asking our taxpayers to maybe have to pay more of a tax or less of a tax depending on how much was in our LSRA. And at the time I said, this is a bad idea because we don't know, and if you're a taxpayer and the citizen, when does that light switch flip on and off? So as I read this, Mr. President, I'm equally unclear of how this would work. And I don't know why we would have a trigger for an effective date built into the statute. It seems, if you follow Supreme Court decisions, they're not always clear and cut dry. We just talked about in this chamber a hunting issue with off-reservation hunting rights and how that's remanded to a lower court and there's more legal proceedings to tease out some of those issues. So despite the fact that there might be a desire or a thought that, a Supreme Court decision can either do one thing or another, I think it's way more nuanced than that. And so I don't know why we wouldn't wait to see what the Supreme Court does, analyze that, talk about it as a legislature, and then have a clear effective date that says this shall take effect immediately. This shall take effect July 1st. So I don't understand this. And I think we owe it to the people in our state to have these uncomfortable conversations. If we're going to bring these bills, we need to have these conversations. So if I could get some answers to that on the effective date, I don't understand how this would work.
Okay, thank you. Anyone like to respond to Senator Landon?
Mr. President, I was sitting in that chair yesterday, and I guess my question on this bill was a little more fundamental. It was, I mean, I get it. I get it. We have to bring it. It's one of the boxes that we're supposed to mark, you know, and they'll be keeping an eye on that and all that stuff. I've already indicated to you, you know, my background, and I think most people know me. But my concern is just the fundamental question of why in the world are we encumbering some future legislature? And the senator from Laramie County is exactly right. We don't even know what that opinion might entail or nuances that might dictate something else to that legislature. The one that will be sitting here someday, we may not even be here. We try not to do this. In all my years I've been here, we've told each other repeatedly that you really can't do that to future legislators. I just wonder what the hurry is to put something in place betting on the come. So that's what I laid awake last night thinking, is this really good policy for us to do it this way? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion? We are, for those listening, we are on House Bill 92. Following the amendment vote, we are back on the bill. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I will say I agree with the previous two speakers, but I rise to raise a more fundamental issue that I tried to explain the other day on another bill. Mr. President, my objection to this bill is that it imposes the doctrines of one set of religious denominations, faiths, on other religious denominations and faiths that do not agree with the conclusions of that one. And that includes my church. And I'm going to vote with my church on this one. My church does not think that this is a proper piece of legislation because we believe that these, particularly the early abortions, are a matter of the choice of the woman involved. And so this establishes the doctrines of one religion over those of another, whereas the current statutory arrangement we have gives respect to the churches that do not, that believe, that are opposed, gives respect to the churches who believe that abortion is wrong by radically limiting the public funding of abortion. And I voted for that when it was enacted in 1985 because I thought that was appropriate. But this does the opposite. It does not respect those churches and the faiths that do think it's the woman's right to choose. So for that reason, Mr. President, tomorrow I will vote against this bill.
All right, further discussion. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just like every other bill that comes before this body, we're voting on a policy decision, and that's not something new. It's not something we don't do on a regular basis. And in fact, we were asked to vote on the come on a lot of places in the budget, and your good appropriations committee decided we might not do that with our finances this year. However, and you backed us up on that, and thank you for that. However, what this bill seeks to do is shift that decision back to the state should the Supreme Court make a ruling. And it is a preemptive stance of where the state of Wyoming will stand. And I'd like to remind you all what our Constitution says in Article 1, Section 2. equality of all, in their inherent rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all members of the human race are equal. The question before us today, fellow senators, is this a human life? And it is. It is a human life. It's a baby. And it should be protected by us. And so there are two lives here, not just the mother. There's a baby and there's a mother, and she may be in bad circumstances sometimes. However, I've talked to a lot of women who have had an abortion, and it puts them in a terribly bad situation once they've dealt with the outcome of that abortion, because they really don't know what they're doing until it's done. And some have been on the verge of suicide. So if you want to talk about that, we can go there too. But my fellow senators, the choice before you today, is this a human life? And I assert to you that it is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Let's go Senator Boner, Senator Salazar in that order. Go ahead, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do appreciate the desire to have a discussion on this important issue. As the previous speaker pointed out, we might actually have the opportunity to make this policy decision that's been taken away from us by the federal judiciary for almost 50 years now. And so, Mr. President, I just have to rise, and as the youngest member of this body, point out that the only individuals I've heard talk about their religious preferences are the folks who are opposed to this bill. As the previous speaker pointed out, we've learned a lot in the past 50 years about life in the womb. The science has advanced. We know now that from the moment of conception, that there's a individual with their genome is set. What you look like will be set. Whether you're a male or female is set from that moment on. We know that viability, the question of when that baby is viable outside the womb, gets earlier and earlier as science advances. And I think it's also important to point out that our social safety net has advanced significantly in the past 50 years. We have the CHIP program. We have even organizations outside the government that help women in crisis pregnancy. So we need to update this discussion, update our rhetoric to this century. Mr. President, acknowledge the science, acknowledge the way our social safety net has evolved. Mr. President, I thoroughly believe it takes a greater leap of faith to be pro-choice than it takes to be pro-life here in this day and age, 2022. So I hope you can support the bill tomorrow on third reading. It's an important policy choice, and we're simply making sure that that policy choice has been made from the moment we're given the opportunity. If that happens, we don't know if it will. If it happens, we'll have the opportunity to make that policy choice right now. We're making that decision now instead of next year. And if the Supreme Court makes a different decision, well, I'm sure we'll have a discussion. We'll have that discussion next year as well. On and for the bill.
We'll go back to Senator Salazar next, and then we're moving back to Senator Ellis from there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to, I want to associate myself with the previous remarks too. I'm not totally unfamiliar with pro-life legislation, and I don't believe that I have ever brought up my church or my religious convictions. I would simply say that yes, I assume that some members of the faith-based community support this bill, but I think it would be wrong to believe that the non-religious community doesn't have an opinion. They do have an opinion. There are plenty of non-religious individuals who have views on this issue. I would also say that those churches who I have heard from, who support this pro-life bill, I have strong opposition to a number of social issues that they do support. So this isn't, this is, I guess I would say that, yes, your religious convictions can come into this view, to your opinion on this view, but there are numerous non-religious individuals who have strong views on this. And I would again say that those churches, there are churches who support pro-life legislation, there are churches who don't. And those of us, such as myself, I have strong opposition to what some of the faith-based community churches have on other social issues. So this is not there's no unanimity other than the fact that we all align on a specific issue. And so to lump faith-based completely with this issue, it's much more complicated issue, I think, than simply what church you come from. Thank you.
Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Mr. President. On my second time, this is the confusion I have. Mine has nothing to do with the merits of the abortion issue, quite honestly. But in this bill, we say this subsection shall be effective 5 days after the date that the Attorney General certifies to the Secretary of State that the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. The Attorney General is not a judge. The Attorney General advises the governor. Period. They can advise the governor, they can issue opinions, but they are not a judge. And so I don't know why we as a legislature would hand over a decision like this and empower an Attorney General who advises the governor with such decision-making authority. I think a lot of people are going to watch what happens in Washington, D.C. with this decision. I think as a legislature, we see what happens. We meet, we respond with legislation, where we pick effective dates, where we read, we analyze. But the notion that somehow we're going to start handing this off to our Attorney General to decide, that's where I'm really uncomfortable, Mr. President. I get the creativity and what this is trying to do, but for me, that's a major problem.
Any further discussion? Senator Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll try to wrap it up. And Senator, if you stay on the floor, I'll try to explain. Okay, great. Draft legislation that the good bringer from the other side decided to bring. She brought this, crafted the way it is. And we're not saying that the Attorney General has a role in the decision. He's just going to certify that decision like a intermediary and bring it to our state. And I hope that helps her understand. Draft legislation that's passed all over the country. I think Wyoming would be one of maybe 13, 14 states that have already done this, and there are more that have proposed legislation on this. And then I wanted to just say quickly before we end and we hopefully move this forward to third reading, a trip back to our Declaration of Independence, and to also thank the previous speakers who spoke on behalf of this bill. We seem to think that the government doesn't have a place in this decision, and I think we do. And I think from the founding, the very founding of our nation, when our Declaration of Independence was written, the gentleman that so brilliantly wrote it said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, maybe not conceived equally, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life," and I'll repeat that, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights to life, to secure them, governments are instituted among men. So one of the most important things we're here to do is to secure life, and not just life on the outside of the womb, but on the inside as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss. Oh. Yeah, you're on. Here it is.
How about now? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I understand, obviously, the concerns of both sides on this and the deeply held beliefs that each of us has in this topic. But as the good senator from Fremont County noted, women are not the property of the state of Wyoming. The idea that a government of a state can compel an individual for 9 months against their wishes, against their freedom, to adhere to a state mandate is the concern that this would potentially overcome. And again, I don't think there's anyone in this room, in this chamber, in this building that has any interest in encouraging abortion. That's not what we're discussing here. I would love for us to have serious conversations about building a system in Wyoming that makes that decision unnecessary. And we can do that. We have the resources to do that together, to agree in a bipartisan manner to take steps that would alleviate that choice from having to be made based on the circumstances of that individual. But we have not proceeded to the point where it's always easy, Mr. President. But this idea that we want to empower the state to force a woman against her will to effectively be a vehicle for the gestation for 9 months. You know, that's what this concern comes to for me, about that woman's freedom, about that woman's choice, and about the role of government in this, and where the line should be drawn. This is well beyond that line for me, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Ready for? Yeah. Here we go. Second reading of Senate File 92. Having been read, 2 separate questions. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. I say Senate, let's for the record. House Bill 92, having been read 2 separate times. Shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Just better to be safe. House Bill 96, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 96 engrossed, state official salary.
House Bill 96, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 105, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 105, severance tax reduction, COLE.
There is an amendment. Please read in the amendment.
House Bill 105, second reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 8, delete.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 105. Yesterday, we heard a lot about the fairness of this bill, and I agree there should be a fairness in the taxes on our minerals. And so what this bill does, all this amendment does is change it from 6.5 to 6, which is what oil and gas are taxed at. And so we do make it a real fair bill and give the break to the coal companies. It amounts to about, I believe that yesterday they said 9 million for a half. So it's 18 million a year for the coal companies for some relief for them. And that's all the bill does. Thank you.
Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, not because I don't want to give an even bigger tax cut to the coal mining community, but industry is not asking for this. They're asking for a half in the bill. And so I don't want you to think that my community is asking for this. We are not. We would like to see the bill left alone. And so I would urge you to vote no on the amendment.
Okay, Senator Case.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I also would urge us to vote no on the amendment. Mr. President, this is a bill about a tax cut that will have no impact whatsoever on the amount of coal that's produced in Wyoming and burned in power plants across the United States. All we're doing is giving money up. And it's very hard for us to realize that we have a structural deficit. I deal with it. I'm your revenue chairman. I worry about this all the time, Mr. President. The very fact that we can expand spending because we have this manna from Washington that's a result of the epidemic and the crisis that this country's gone through for the past 2 years. The very fact that we're letting that cloud our thinking and think that our financial situation is good and that things are looking bright. No, we have a really bad structural deficit. The ARPA funding that we are enjoying and spending and now leaving even less and less on the table amounts to about the same amount of money that we lost in mineral tax revenues since 2016. Yes, we have a world crisis that is stimulating energy prices, and we might have a good year, or a good 6 months, or a good year and a half. We have not fixed the underlying issues. And yes, the country's making some bad decisions about renewables, about electric grid, about baseload power, but we're stuck. As those power plants reduce their production and are supplemented with renewables and go offline completely and forever, that coal won't be burned. All taxes, this doesn't put money in the coal companies' pockets. It puts money in the railroads' pockets, and they're doing fairly well, and they didn't ask for it. Oppose this amendment. Hope you'll oppose the bill tomorrow.
Any more on the amendment, Senator Scott?
Yeas and nays, please.
Okay, and this is on a second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 105. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, like my friend from over in Camel Country mentioned, the industry didn't ask for the whole 1%. We've tried and tried and tried to get the whole 1% for years and years and years since I've been in office. And it's failed every single time because everybody says it's just too much money we're giving up. So I'm afraid if we adopt that amendment, what we're doing is killing the bill. This is I think a 0.5% gets them enough of a relief that they can operate. And I would urge you to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion? I believe we had a call for ayes and nays. This is on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 105. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 105, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Driscoll? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Garou? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. James? James? James, no. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Cost? No. Landon? Aye. McEwen excused. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstetter? No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 2 aye, 27 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 105 has failed. We're back on the bill. House Bill 105 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 107, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 107, Water State Revolving Funds Amendments.
House Bill 107, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 131, the 2nd reading of the House bill.
House Bill 131 engrossed, nuclear power generation and storage amendments.
There is an amendment. Read in the first amendment.
House Bill 131, second reading, amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 10, delete.
Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 131. What this amendment does, Mr. President, is reinstates, the effect of it is to reinstate a $2 per megawatt hour tax on this production from this facility. It would, as you recall, for our wind industry, I wish it was $5, to be honest, Mr. President, but the wind industry has a $1 per megawatt tax. Solar industry doesn't have anything. Of course, our fossil fuel-fired gas and coal pay other taxes, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think this is kind of a fairness thing. You know, if maybe this fails, I'll come back with another proposal, maybe for a single dollar. But I do want to point out, if we can get to a vision where we have a tax on the production of electricity going forward, irregardless of where the electricity comes from, that'll be a good place for Wyoming. But when we put that tax in, we will allow, I hope, for the deduction of other taxes paid, severance, ad valorem, any other production taxes. So if this were to go forward into a bigger vision of taxes on electric production, this $2 tax would be a deduction from the other one. So we're not going to be compounding. But this is a fairness issue, Mr. President, and I will hope that you will support the tax.
Discussion. This is on second reading number 1. Yeah, I got you. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 131, just for those listening. Go ahead.
Mr. President, I would ask for a ruling from the chair as to whether or not this is germane to the bill. We're changing exemptions to credits.
We'll allow it. Go ahead and want to have discussion? We'll allow it.
I didn't hear you, sir.
We're going to allow it. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. All right,
You
Mr.
wanna
Chairman, I would like to
discuss?
speak against the amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, essentially what this does is, remember, the reactor would have been exempt, and essentially we're putting a $2 per megawatt hour tax on. And since it comes from the good revenue chairman, I would think that this would be better for an interim study rather than putting it on a second reading amendment. Also, it changes on lines 23 to 20%. Remember, in the original bill, it is 80% of the advanced nuclear reactors uranium used for producing electricity from a uranium mine in the United States. So on and against, I think that reminds me of some things that a former senator from Cheyenne used to say, that was the president of this body at one time. This turns the bill into a gummer.
Okay, Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, point of order, I'm reading that amendment, it says $3. Maybe the maker could explain why it's $2.
Before we go back, any other questions for the sponsor? All right, let's take it back to the sponsor. Go ahead. Oops, Senator Rothfuss. Go ahead.
Shocked again. Mr. President, this would be for a second time, so I'm just going to address the answer to the immediately previous question. And just for clarification, that would not be a point of order, that would have to be argument in terms of a speech. Clarification is still a question and an argument. But as to the answer to the question, this is a 5 minus 3 equals 2 problem, where the $3 is the portion of an exemption against a $5 existing tax. So $2, as expressed by the proponent of the amendment, is correct. It would be a $2 tax on this facility per megawatt hour. And again, I'll just reiterate, current policy in statute is a $5 per megawatt hour on a standard reactor, nuclear reactor. As originally written, there would have been an exemption for this reactor, so it would have been $0. And this limits by $3 the existing tax, taking it to $2. Again, just providing clarification, Mr. Chairman. And I would say, as far as speaking to the amendment, on and against the amendment, but not because I disagree with the concept, but because I can tell you during the interim, I didn't want anything about taxation in this bill, because this bill really wasn't supposed to be focused on taxation. I'm a little disappointed that we ended up with a bill that had taxation, because it's the underlying policies in the bill that were the key concepts in the bill, not with regard to taxation, because typically these are the issues that draw attention away from the policy issues that are the underlying foundation to the bill. So on and against the amendment, but it's an important discussion. The good senator that was bringing this amendment discussed the idea of creating a thoughtful, appropriate, uniform electrical power generation tax with credits built into it. That should be the long-term solution. We certainly agree on that. But this isn't that solution, Mr. President.
Okay, anything before we go back to the sponsor? Let's go back to Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And it's not a gummer, because if you read the language about the domestic use of uranium, it begins on line 20, say 23. Advanced nuclear reactors, uranium used in the production of electricity at the reactor is sourced from uranium mines not located in the United States. So, so in order to qualify for the credit, you have to use domestic uranium, hopefully Wyoming uranium, Mr. President. 80% Wyoming uranium or better, because that's what we believe in. We don't like the Ruskies, and we don't want to use their uranium, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, this is good policy, and with respect to the issue of the bill brought a tax credit. This reduces the tax credit. So it's perfectly in line with what the bill does. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay, this is on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 131. All those in favor, question being called, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
No.
Amendment has failed. Division being called, all those in favor stand. Nine yes. All those opposed, stand. Yeah, 20 no. The amendment has failed. Second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 131. Read it in.
House Bill 131, second reading amendment number 2 to engross copy, page 2, line 2, after.
Senator Case.
Well, I'm sorry, waiting for the green light. Mr. President, thank you very much. I move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 131. Mr. President, what this amendment does is to place this facility under our Industrial Siting Act and have the same compliance with industrial siting that any other large industrial facility would have. I think that's, there's a fairness issue there as well, Mr. President. But really, the Industrial Siting Act is designed to help our communities transition when there's great impacts. And it's, we've tweaked that several times, and there's probably more tweaks with respect to industrial siting, but it's an important protection that we have when large industrial facilities are placed in our communities. And so this restores those requirements of industrial siting. I think it's good for everyone, and I ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. On this one, this is a serious issue, and I think we need to think about what we're really doing here. And first of all, throughout the summer, trying to decide if advanced nuclear reactors are safe for my community, I came to the conclusion that Wyoming does not have the expertise to do this. And where that expertise is the NRC. And almost always throughout my legislative career, I've worked for primacy within our state, that we brought it to us because it was easier for our state employees to cite different things like mines or whatever. But this was one where we do not want to do that. We do not want to have anything other than the NRC making sure that every one of these are safe and done to national requirements that have been safe. And so I would urge you to vote no.
Senator Cole.
I stand in favor of this amendment. I find it, I don't know, revealing. Now we think the Industrial Siting Council is going to pose a safety hazard to a project. I think I don't quite get that connection, the nexus. I will also say that we're gonna give up any taxation revenue per megawatt hour. We're gonna let our folks in Wyoming not have any, I don't know, any connection with the Industrial Siting Council for, I don't know, their input. Maybe it'll give comfort to the people in the state of Wyoming just what's going on here, because it's a local input. I don't say that, I mean, obviously they're not going to override the NRC, but I think being cooperators and working together is a path forward, and not saying, well, I'm just going to give up and go home and I hope it all turns out correctly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
President.
Further discussion, Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I would ask that an explanation on the safety issue. I thought the issue with regard to the Siting Council was things like impact of a very large workforce and that sort of thing. And I don't see why a large nuclear facility is different from a large coal facility or any other large industrial facility. And so, Mr. President, my questions I hope to be answered is, what's the safety issue got to do with this, if anything?
Let's go back to Senator Perkins and then over to Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just, in fact, I'd appreciate a little bit more information about the effect and kind of the idea behind some of this. So just going back and looking at 3511-1502, which is what this goes into, and so takes it from when, if you look at line 10 of the amendment, facilities subject to this article are exempt from the jurisdiction, and it strikes that out and shall comply with the requirements of the Industrial Information Siting Act. But if you continue down in other parts of 1115-102, what this really, the application is an application to cite a high-level radioactive waste storage facility. And so what I don't understand is, why are we moving this? And I mean, to me, it seems to me that this amendment seems to create decide that this new facility is the equivalent of a high-level radioactive waste storage facility, and that may be appropriate at some, but I mean, to do this on a second reading amendment without having this gone through the committee, I'm struggling with this a little bit, because I mean, I can understand some of that, but as you go down in the other parts of this particular section, again, it's mostly relative to a high-level radioactive storage facility, and I don't know that that's an appropriate construct for these modular nuclear reactors that we're talking about. They're just such a different animal. And so I feel like I don't understand this, and I feel like I'm not understanding the full intent of this. And I think it potentially has far more reaching ramifications than just the fact that it's going to go through industrial siting. If we want to do this into industrial siting, we can just simply say that they have to go to industrial siting. I don't think we have to pull it in here and make it equivalent to a high-level radioactive waste storage facility. So unless I hear something that persuades me differently, I think that this amendment actually seems to me, my initial impression is, seems to me to cause some mischief that may not be intending to do.
Senator Anderson. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Senator Rothfuss, I have a short memory. Let's go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wanted to dispel some of the concerns that have been raised in the last 5 or 6 speeches. There's a discussion or an impression that the industrial siting process does not apply to this project or any other nuclear projects, because honestly, we're not looking at the full context within which the discussion is being had. And this is one of the things that was discussed as this legislation was being drafted and as the concepts were being drafted. And what you see, if you look at the original bill on page 5, this is the engrossed version, paragraph E. The provisions of the Industrial Development Information and Siting Act, Wyoming statute, shall apply only to the extent that those provisions do not interfere with, contradict, or duplicate any requirements of the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So what does that mean, Mr. President? That means that yes, you do the industrial siting process, you just don't duplicate it or contradict with the NRC. So why is that? Well, you don't get to contradict the NRC. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. There is full preemption on all NRC actions. If we add industrial siting, no one's going to listen to industrial siting. The value of the industrial siting is if it contradicts the NRC. They're going to listen, as the good senator was saying. There's a lot of things that relate to, all right, well, what about workforce? Yeah, that's good. That's not contradicting the NRC. What about some of the other materials around the city, the kind of general siting concepts? That's all going to take place pursuant to the way the statute is already crafted. The idea here really is adding back on the layer of redundancy. Now, with regard to safety, Mr. President, the key concept here is we do not have the technical expertise to say, well, NRC, you may think that we should build this nuclear reactor in this way, but the Wyoming Industrial Siting Commission thinks it should be down the road a little ways. No. And it's probably good that we don't have the authority to override the Nuclear Regulatory Commission on these types of decisions. They don't grant any cessation of responsibility or any delegation of authority when it comes to nuclear reactor design. You can't engage, as we do, and claim primacy on certain activities related to uranium processing, for example, where we became an NRC agreement state. There is no agreement state for a nuclear reactor. And again, I'll say this is good. Whether you like this project or don't like this project, this is still good that the NRC is going to be the entity that looks at the technological and technical aspects of it and does the evaluation and makes the recommendations on the safety, because they're not looking at it, in theory, hopefully, from a political standpoint, but rather from a technical standpoint. So, as we're looking at this was something that was raised in committee. It was raised during the interim, but the reason we didn't adopt this amendment was because it's not an appropriate amendment. If we do want more transparency, if we do want more public meetings, if we want more stakeholder input, that's great. Bring those bills. We're going to have years ahead of us, literally, to work this process. And I don't think anyone is reticent to increase stakeholder input, feedback, reporting, transparency. We added an amendment in the last reading that did that, Mr. President. And I'm a strong advocate for that as we move forward with this project. This isn't it. This is not the way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Anderson?
Mr. President, in the interim and most recently, we heard from a lot of state agencies, and every one of them said that the NRC would have primacy and we would not have input into this from the Industrial Siting Council, DEQ, or otherwise. And they're all working with the NRC for all these things, but this plant will be built like any other plant in any other state with all the safety requirements that the NRC has, and it'll be built safely and something that we can be proud of. We do not need the Industrial Siting Council helping the NRC, and they have said as much too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to follow up, I think there was a question from one of my colleagues from Base Creek about all the Industrial Siting Council does is do the local distributions, and actually they do assess the project as well. They have to approve the project. So this would, I don't know what would happen if, say, the NRC approves a project, but Industrial Siting Council doesn't under this amendment. I'd also like to point out another part of this amendment is to delete paragraph, or basically reverse the effect of paragraph E on page 5, which basically says that advanced nuclear reactors are going to be subject to Industrial Siting Council. And it deletes all the part that says that the NRC will prevail. So let's be clear about what this amendment would do. I think it's very troublesome. It has the potential of derailing the intent of this legislation, and I hope that you vote against it.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Case?
Mr. President, I'm not trying to derail this project. I think this is good for the country and good for Wyoming, and I really think this is an important piece of our future. In bringing the amendment, I don't care about the I think the NRC rules over industrial siting. I don't want the industrial siting to duplicate NRC activities. But I do want the industrial siting law with respect to community impacts, impact payments, planning, approvals to occur. Stay out of the nuclear side. Mr. President, I'm convinced that there may be a problem with the amendment. I appreciate the discussion. You can see where I want to go, and I will bring a better amendment tomorrow, should that be appropriate. I would ask permission to withdraw the amendment.
All right. Absent objection, the amendment has been withdrawn. That's second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 131. Next amendment, second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 131. Read it in, please.
House Bill 131, second reading amendment number 3 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 4, delete.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 131. Ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. President, there were a series of 3 amendments that were brought by the PSC that they asked to clean up the language of the legislation. I managed to appropriately get 2 of them into the standing committee amendment and completely missed the 3rd. This is the 3rd. So it is cleanup requested by the PSC. The lines that are referenced, page 7, lines 9 through 16, insert a provision in an area of statute that in the eyes of the PSC would have nothing to do with this project, and it would therefore be an awkward reference to something which was related to House Bill 159 from a few years ago, where we're reusing a coal-fired power plant. It is not something that could be applicable. It was believed that there would be confusion. So with that, I'd ask the body support.
Thank you. Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I believe this to be a friendly amendment. I would ask for your favorable support.
Okay, further discussion. This is on second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 131. All those in favor, question be called. All those in favor say aye. Aye. As opposed, nay. The amendment has passed. Back on the bill. Back on the bill. House Bill 131. Having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 146, second reading of the House bill. Whoops. Senator, did you want to speak to? Oh, you're waiting for the amendment. Okay. Yeah, wait, go ahead and let him read it in.
House Bill 146, engrossed. General government reports.
There is an amendment. Read in the amendment.
House Bill 146, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, delete.
Senator Furphy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 146 and ask for your approval.
Go ahead. Go ahead and, you've moved it, he's read it in, so you go ahead and explain it.
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been in communication with one of the trustees at the university. I think what this body's intent has gotten across, that the senator who worked on this issue, I think the content of the courses will be looked at carefully at the university. The problem with the reporting requirement that we passed in Committee of the Whole is it is quite onerous on the university, very expensive, because what happens is the reporting requirement will require every college and every major in those colleges to develop this report. I don't think that's going to fix the issue. I think we've made ourselves clear already, so no need to force the university to spend a huge amount of money on reporting that won't change anything. Anyway, so I vote on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the amendment. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And on and against the amendment, let's keep this in. We need to have this report and find out exactly what's happening. I think that it should be readily available for them to provide these reports to us. We ask for reports all the time, and it makes me a little leery that they are not wanting to provide this now. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, further discussion. We are on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 14. Although, Senator Rothfuss.
Just very briefly on and for the amendment. Again,
There, I didn't touch it. Let me turn it on, let's reboot it. Okay.
all right, there we go, I'm back. Mr. President, these are the kinds of reports, if you're curious about such things, honestly, you could send an email to the university, to folks at the university, and ask questions. They do a great job of responding when information is needed. The concern I have with this is that making this an awkward official action based on its original origin is a source of significant consternation and is just trying to micromanage in the university in a way that I feel is counter to academic freedom and honestly counter to financial interests. It's a tremendous amount of work when it's a formal ask like this, where I think just some informal fact-finding and honestly maybe sitting down just having a cup of coffee and asking. Sometimes we don't need a law. Sometimes a cup of coffee will get the answers that we need. And I don't think everybody in here is really wondering this in the same detail. So I'll broker that cup of coffee if we vote down this amendment, Mr. President. I'll even pay for it. Free appropriation from my pocket to you. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, let's go over to Senator Coleman. What I'm being told, it's static electricity that's taking your mics off. Okay, go ahead, Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, I think transparency is really what we're talking about currently. Transparency to the public, ease of information so you don't have to dig, make phone calls. Makes a lot of sense to me that we move forward with this, see how it works. I think more information is better. The light is better than darkness. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion. We're on the amendment. Senator Hutchings.
Really quickly, Mr. Chairman, if the university is concerned about expense, they can stop sending me multiple mailers on cardstock, double-sided colors. It's just phenomenal, the amount of money I know they're expending on these mailings. they can take me off their mailing list and send all that information to the legislature. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right,
Chairman.
thank you. This question.
On and against
You know,
the
Senator
amendment.
Hicks, I sense you may be
Mr.
taking us in a
President,
different
vote
direction.
no.
There you go. All right. Okay, this is on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 146, House Bill 146. On the amendment, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Amendment has failed. Back on the bill. House Bill 146, having been read as 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Having no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Floor Leader, we're probably at time if you want to make a transition, a little break before, lunch break, before we go into the thirds. So your thoughts, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we stand recessed till 2 p.m.
Okay, announcements. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Joint Agricultural Committee will meet upon noon recess here, probably about half an hour in Capitol Extension Room W6 and online to discuss interim topics.
Thank you. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Your conference committee on Senate File 40, Criminal Record Dissemination Military Department, will meet at 1 o'clock today down in room 110 to try to iron out difficulties on Senate File 40. Thank you.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 3 will meet with its partners down in the House tomorrow to discuss interim topics at 1 o'clock and I believe 1:10.
Okay, Senator Kinski.
Mr. President, your Appropriations Committee number 2 meets today, Wednesday, March 9th, upon noon recess in room E301 and online to consider interim topics.
Thank you, Senator. Further announcements? Further announcements? All right. Heard the motion. Okay. Go ahead.
And we're going to do that as well tomorrow upon noon recess to discuss interim topics as well, same room.
Thank you. All right. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. We'll stand recessed until 2 p.m., 2 o'clock.